from Gambia. Gambia participates. Please let's welcome Ma. Next to Ma is Jos Sapong, who is the chair? Is it chair, director, head, chief executive, as CEO, whatever, but he's the head of the institution. He's the head of the National Media Commission of Ghana. George, you're welcome. Please give him a round of applause. Next to George is Isaac Samuel Zan, who is the Data Center Director at the National Elections Commission of Liberia. You're welcome, Isaac. And next is Aisha Dabo, who is a co-founder and coordinator of Africtivists from Senegal. Aisha, you're welcome. We have other contributors who will be speaking from the floor, and it's Professor Okechukwu Ibianu, who will be contributing from the floor. Please welcome Professor Ibianu. So what we want to do with this session is to just ask the speakers to give us a sense of how technology was used in the elections that held in 2023 and 2024. And they have different experiences. But I'm going to start with the director of the data center at the Electoral Commission of Liberia. And just building on the last two sessions, Isaac, can you tell us very briefly, how technology contributed to the success of the Liberia elections?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks to Yega for the invitation to be here today and to speak to you, honorable men and women. Again, how did technology contribute to the success of the 2023 elections in Liberia? Number one, we went over some of the challenges we've had in our electoral process from 2005 to 2011, 2017, and in 2020 we discovered that it was important to make progress first with how we did the voter registration, that is a migration from the obsolete optical mark recognition technology that was used between 2005 and 2020 to the introduction of biometric technology for the registration of voters. And by that, we were able to achieve robust deduplication using both facial recognition technology and fingerprint identification. The next implementation was to find a way to make results available to the public after they were announced by members of the Board of Commissioners. Why was that important for us? When elections are conducted in Liberia, at every polling place, for example, in 2023, we had 5,890 polling places. That means in 5,890 different locations across the country, everyone had access to the results. But prior to 2020, those results will be announced in a collated format by the Board of Commissioners, and then a printed copy is given to people in its collated form. But when I took over as director of the data center in 2020, we said, no, we're going to create something called the online results portal that allows the public to have the results in the form in which it was collected from the polling place, tallied at the magisterial office, and subsequently announced at the NEC headquarters. What that meant for us was that if you were in polling place 1 in a particular location and the results have been announced in its holistic form, you're able to go back to the NEC official portal and you see the result as was obtained from that particular polling place. What that did for us as a commission is that it allowed accuracy in tabulation of the results. It allowed observers and media groups to cross-check everything that we said constituted the numbers that we got from the field. So with the ORP, that is the online results portal, with the introduction of biometric technology for the elections and the recruitment of more females. As at 2023, we recruited at least 45 to 46% of females to participate in the electoral process. That for us was key to ensuring that those results were credible. We recruited people strictly on the basis of their qualification. We were not taking anybody recommended by anyone, whether at the level of the NEC or from any other group. And we also did background checks on the people who worked for us. So it wasn't just the technology. Going back to what the professor said earlier this morning, Professor Jega, we didn't just depend on the technology. We had to cross-check the people that we sent into the field to man the technology, to tabulate the results, and to give us feedback. I hope I've answered your question, sir.
Yes, you have, Isaac. But just staying with you. So in Liberia, if there is a discrepancy between the results on the online portal and the hard copy results, which one takes precedence? And maybe, did you have any such experience in the last election?
Okay, so I'll take you back to the 2020 elections. Why did we introduce the ORP? The first thing was not to prove that NEC as an institution is credible. The intention was so that if there is a challenge, we can have a reason to prove our credibility. So the quest was not to say, hey, NEC is credible. No, where is the challenge? Is it from the field or is it at the point of tally? So there was an election in Grand Cru County. That 2020 election was for Senate. So the results are being tallied at the magisterial office. They are being announced in Central Monrovia. One of the senatorial candidates came out and said, no, the result I got from polling place XYZ in so-and-so location is different from what is on your online results portal. Though it had already been tallied at the magisterial office, immediately the hearing officer said, bring me your result. Observers, media groups, other agents available, give me your result. What did NEC put out? This is what we put out. Again, we must be clear to ourselves. You may think that you've recruited the best people. When they're out there in the field, the game is different. Some people for fear of their lives, some people because they are just not credible, could do anything to impede the integrity of the EMB. So we took those results from the various parties, looked at them, and we saw that there was inconsistency with just one number. So what do? We take all the numbers that are consistent, and then we compare them with what we had on the portal. And we said, no, go back to the ballot box, do a recount, and come back to us. So they did the recount, and it was consistent with what the contending party had brought forth. We did a re-examination, did a tally, and that became the official result. And the person who was complaining eventually won the election. So in that way, we are able to say, okay, NEC as an institution is not a party to any kind of electoral malpractice in any form. Thank you.
So I'll be right to say you relied on the manual process.
Rely on the manual process. We relied on the participation of local and international observers, especially the media groups. Okay. Yes.
All right. Thanks so much. Well, Ma, let me come to you. So for those who know Gambia, Gambia has a very unique voting procedure. Maybe let's start from that, because this is also an opportunity to tell the world Gambia's unique form of voting. Do you do electronic voting?
That's a good question. No, we don't do electronic voting. By the way, we use marble stones, the primitive way, the old way of African system of elections. So we have a ballot drum, marble stones, and you put in your marble stone, just like in schools, right? If you're voting for a prefect or a councillor, and our former dictator, Yahya Jammeh, actually described it as Eric-proof elections, and it's the election that actually voted him out of office. So yes, we use marble. By the way, before I actually receive any question from Samson, it's crazy because this is the first time I share the same panel with Samson, and he's the one that trained me on elections. So I will not do justice without recognizing that. That was a long time ago, way younger than how he looks today. and Cynthia, my troublemaker. So it's really a pleasure to share this part with you. Thank you.
So back to back to Gambia. Do you use technology in any aspect of your electoral process? And if yes, can you share what aspects and what has been the experience being one of the leading election observation groups in Gambia?
So our voter registration is biometric, and just like any other country that does voter registration. However, there are certain challenges that we actually experience because during the registration process in June 2021, the biometric system sometimes duplicate voters, right? So the election management body, although they were transparent, they were giving real-time information on the number of people that they have registered so far. But then when they reconciled, the updates that they were giving does not tally with the total number of amount of voters that was registered, which was 152 voters. So the explanation was, obviously the system was duplicating, they have to remove the duplicates, and which is understandable, but it raises some eyebrows within the political spectrum, right? Because most politicians will say that elections are stolen during the registration, and others will say there are certain voters that they have removed, right? That should be on the voter roll. But however, when we were doing our election observation, there were no instances where a voter presents his or her voter's card at the polling station and he or she was thrown away because the person's name is not on the voter register. So we could consider to be a credible voter roll. In terms of results transmission and publication, we don't have a system. We don't have a digital system where the results are transmitted from the polling stations to a results viewing portal like in Nigeria. We don't. And this is something else that we started having conversation with the IEC, but at our own level as civil society organization, we developed our own digital app called Marble. We named it after that marble stone that we use to cast our votes. We call it Marble, and on this mobile application, we will publish the certified results, and user-friendly. People can actually view it anytime, anywhere. And in 2021, actually, it was crashed because there were a lot of traffic towards the app, and as a result, we had to contact the local company that developed, because it was in Gambia as well. The reason why I said local company, because if you look at most of the African in the EMBs, their technology are not developed by Africans. You look at the biometric voter registration system and electronic results transmission in Ivory Coast, it's developed in France, one who colonized them. In Mauritius and Cape Verde in Spain, that's where their electronic biometric voter registration and results transmission was developed. The same thing for Namibia, the Miru system in South Korea developed their electronic voting machine. In Ghana, I believe is neurotechnology in Lithuania. So last year, myself and Samson also, we were in a summit, election integrity summit in Uganda. And a tech person stood and said, we have been talking about elections integrity, but we have not questioned the integrity of those that develop these digital tools that we use in our elections. They are developed at the backside, and then those tools are given to us to use. So if the BVAS or any other machines have an issue, should we also look back and audit the ones who develop it? And this also has been raising EMB apathy in adapting technology. And I think President Goodluck Jonathan did mention that, right? Most EMBs, especially ours, ask this question, right? How are you going to guarantee the credibility of this digital tool that you are advocating for us to use? This does not go to say that we want technology in our elections because it will make the process seamless. We still want to maintain the marble. We don't want to use a voting machine, but we want these elections to be seamless in a way that it will attract voters to get registered, but at the same time also to turn out and vote. But before I hand over back the mic to you, the role of technology in elections, I believe, especially at political party level, it has been underreported because we have now seen a trend on what we call hidden campaign, where politicians use technology to mainstream propaganda. And we've seen what happened in the US, big tech companies, where you and I use those platforms, forcing feeds of politicians on our timeline, right, to influence our votes. There are so many things that I wanted to say regarding technology. I'm not sure whether I am permitted for the next couple of minutes to say it.
No, you're not. But you would say it. Well, thank you very much. Let me go to you, Aisha. Senegal has come up several times this morning. In fact, Senegal's election is touted as the best in West Africa, as far as the discussions today are concerned, until Liberia challenged Senegal in the last panel. But we've heard too much about Senegal, but let's look at the aspect that deals with, technology. Did it play any negative role? Because we've had the positive role in the last two sessions. Did technology play any negative role in the last round of elections in Senegal?
I would say, first of all, thank you, Samson, Cynthia, Ibrahim, Shegun, for hosting me. I would say actually the main negative aspect has been disinformation, misinformation, manipulation of information. That was a real problem, and during every elections we have that. But this time it was heightened because of the crisis in which we were from 2021 to 2023. Yeah, that was the main challenge actually when it comes to the elections. And I don't know if Mr. Sen is here, but I just want to highlight something. I was happy actually to see the Directorate of General Election, do a lot in terms of voter education, because since 2012 and before, it's been civil society organizations doing most of it. It doesn't mean that the directorate was not doing it, but mostly it was CSO. And this time we had this institution also doing the same, if not more, than what civil society were doing. And this is something I want to commend actually from the state side. And also, I don't know if you remember the elections in 2012. We had what's considered as the first citizen observation of elections using digital and electronic tools. There was the platform Ushaidi. People were using social media to raise awareness, and then during election to show that they voted, especially the young people. And one thing, what the law in Senegal allows is, in a polling station, once the results are pasted publicly, it's public information. So that information, the media can, announce that, civil society can tally in their observation, or even citizen observation groups can use that information. You're not allowed to declare the, official one, but at least that one is public and you can tally. So there were many parallel tallying of the results. CSO led by Prof. Gay had their own. There was Senegal Vote, even though they did not publicize it, but it was, and you had many IT developers and groups actually who were tallying the results continuously just to make sure that, because until the last minute actually, and election day was very peaceful, but there was a big lack of trust in the whole system. because of the political situation in which we were, and all the attempts by the former ruling party to make sure that the then president would stay longer. So there was mistrust that led to citizens actually, handling and using the data that was available. And I think it's because the context, the legal context allowed that. Once the results are pasted, they're public information, you can use that. The main disinformation was, as I said, main technological problem was disinformation. And Senegal also, as Mr. Gay said earlier, Mr. Sen rather, it's limited technology that's used. It's not like, for instance, in Nigeria or in Kenya, so it's limited. And I'll take this opportunity, maybe we'll discuss that later, is, I think we are a civil society organization or network that specializes on using civic tech. We advocate for, for tech to be used further in terms of democratic governance in general. But we also understand the context we have in our different countries. And whenever you introduce a technology, there is maybe 100% of what you invested in the technology or more to raise awareness and educate people on how to use it. And an important thing that states tend to forget is the expertise exists in the different countries. And when you are building something you're using taxpayers' money to build, it should be open source. And it could be checked by developers if there are issues, and it should be transparent so that they can monitor. But all those actually aspects that should accompany technologies are mostly not considered when these decisions are being made.
Well, thank you very much. So, George, let's come to you. Aisha has raised the question of trust. I know until, perhaps even up till date, there are still controversies around some results in the last Ghana elections, including Ablekuma. So, George, can technology fix, from your experience, can technology fix this challenge of trust in the electoral process, judging from Ghana's example?
Okay.
Or Ghana's experience, rather.
Thank you very much. I think that most of you would have noticed that I kept smiling and I actually shook Miles' hand because this is the first time I'm hearing this level of appreciation of the challenge. And only Yaga can deal with this kind of thing. So thank you very much for bringing us together. Perhaps first let us understand the challenge. If you look at governance experts in Africa, and please just give me a minute, most governance experts are trained from social science background. Most of the people who are doing our tech are technology people. They have very little understanding of governance. The governance people have very little understanding of technology, except when it is available to be used. So amongst them, they've said some things that I really want to plead with you to give me a minute to explain. Just bring it down because for me, they've said some really profound things. Let me start by a simple question. When you go to the fuel station and you are buying fuel and you see the meter reading, what is the meter reading? What does it mean? Quick one. The amount of fuel you are pumping into your car. Precisely. But that is not true. The meter never reads. The meter actually has no access to the fuel. The meter never reads the fuel. What is happening? In metrology, there is a certain calibration. So there's a certain rotation of the belt, which is approximated to a certain amount of fuel. So when the belt rolls like 1, there's a certain approximation that maybe it's equivalent to a liter. And that is what the meter reads, okay? It's the same thing when you use the thermometer, okay? The thermometer is not measuring the heat of the water. depending on the nature of it, it's either measuring the energy in joules or the resistance, which is approximated back onto the thermometer. It is the same thing when you are dealing with technology and the biometrics things that they are talking about. So when Mal raises the question about the source of the technology, let us quickly break it down. When the machine registers your thumb, it is not your thumb that it is taking. It takes the patterns of the ridges of it and transports that into numerical values. You understand? That is what is recorded in the system. So when you go and put it back on it, it is not checking the image that it has against your thumb. It is actually cross-checking against the numerical data. Do you notice what is happening there? Now, why is this important? It's important because the data that that system is trained on is what it promises to deliver. So if it is trained on Indian data, its fidelity is close to that. So if you are doing facial recognition, you can notice that the facial bones, that it's not your face is taken, it's the peculiar features in your face that it's recording and transporting into the numerical figures. So to the extent that the Asian face looks different from a typical African face, you should understand that where you obtain the technology from has impact on the fidelity. And that's the point Mar is making and all of them are making. I hope you get to understand the point. So when we deal with biometrics and all of you are fighting over whether it worked in Nigeria, whether it had problems in Senegal, this is what is happening. And that's the point that they are making. Okay. So in Ghana, what did we do? We had followed what was happening in Nigeria we started trying and testing systems almost like a decade ago, trying to see how do you build a system that does not rely too much on European or Asian orientation, but is fully Africanized. And then we saw what was going on. We had built our systems. By 2023, when we knew that we were really set, we had the advantage of following very closely what was going on in Nigeria. They made me smile. I was coming back. When I was going for lunch, I was hoping that I'll get some bad jollof and come and bash everybody. And then I got and the jollof was nice. So I was disappointed with myself. And then they restored my smile. But what Nigeria does for all of us is that because of the size, the complexity, if you really want to get things right, you want to look at what is going on in Nigeria to see what works, what are the challenges, and how can you build this. So we created a system that is very, very simple but very interesting, relying on a lot of the things that you have heard here, but also crowdsourcing. So how does it work? We have a very simple system that is geo-stamped. So it's location stamped and it's time stamped. So it can show exactly where the material is taken from. Our law requires that the election is announced at the polling station. So all you need is to get somebody who is using the app and just records the announcement as it is going on and uploads. The system shows exactly the location. Samson saw part of the demonstration. It will show you if it's in this room, it will show you the street, show you the building, and show you where it's happening. So nobody can play games with it. And then it shows you exactly what time this is. So anybody who records this, the Electoral Commission rules prohibit the use of cameras in the booth or the collation. So anybody standing at a distance, you can record video, you can record audio, and just upload. Kojo said something this morning that by the following morning after the elections, the opposition candidate who was the vice president conceded defeat. At that time, the Electoral Commission had not even announced 30% of the results. But I sat with Kojo throughout the night of the elections, and he runs perhaps one of the most impressive PVT systems in terms of maturity and fidelity. And he set up a very interesting system on election night. So it's almost entertainment. And I'm sitting by Kojo. We had two systems where people we had officially registered could submit materials, but anybody else could also submit materials. And the governance experts and some of the civil society had cautioned me that instead of relying on the crowd material, maybe we should just accredit people specifically. So I said, okay, but I'll run the two streams. We were unable to accredit people early, but the crowd submitted from almost every polling station. So by 11 o'clock on election day, I knew up to the last date, except those areas where they had not done the announce, exactly what the figures were. So I was sitting with Kojo when I said, the MPP has lost the election. Kojo didn't hear me well. Then he said, well, but looking at all the parameters and the way things have gone on, I said, I kept quiet. Because based on earlier conversations, all of us had agreed that this is a dicey election. We don't, and this technology we are using is new. We don't want to be the source of controversy. But at the same time, we have material that in the first election petition, we spent like 6 months in court trying to ascertain exactly what happened in the elections. By this time, I had the video evidence for each polling station. So if some area was in doubt and we chose to, we could resolve it with the court to say, this is what happened at the polling station. It's just timed, it's time-stamped. It will show, if they took it together with people who were there, everybody would be shown. So this is it. So this is, in my view, by 10 o'clock, the opposition, the government party, which also set up its own elaborate system of tabulation, got in touch to say, what are you guys seeing? So we are not seeing anything. Then my friend, I can confess that I'm in public service, but I'm not in politics. The president then, I worked in his law firm as a lawyer. I can confess that I was one of the first people he selected to be his spokesperson when he was going into politics. I chose not to go into politics. What it means is that so many of my friends are around government, and sometimes they feel like you owe them some favor. So when they said, what are you seeing? And I said, we are not seeing it. They said, it means things are not going well. Then by midnight, they called to say, this is what we have seen. If what you have seen is different, say so. If what you are seeing is not different, remain silent. So by that time, PVT had showed very clearly the direction we were going. Our system has showed that it was over for the government party. Their own system has shown that game was over. How did you say it in Sierra Leone? London.
You don't too.
Yes. So let me end there. But actually, I have a radio station in Sierra Leone. I used to live there. Malcolm is my collaborator from Liberia. I was very active in West Africa in the conflict moment, and retired as a young man very early. So let me conclude by saying, you asked the question about what did technology do? It seems to me that technology helped all of us. One, to build consensus on what was happening, and two, to agree that this is how we conducted the election. We have confidence in the outcome. However, it does not mean that it erased our entire doubts about what we need to do to reform the process. But in terms of the election day, it seems to me that we had our hands on that. The other thing that raises that is of interest to us is how collaboratively we also dealt with disinformation relying on the same set of technology. I can't talk about that now other than to indicate that there were a number of groups working on disinformation that also formed the Ghana Coalition Against Disinformation, the Ghana Fact-Checking Coalition, that was also massively helpful. So if you put all these things together, I would say that technology had considerably a positive effect on the Ghana elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give them a round of applause. That's very weak. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we'll come to the audience if there are questions or comments before we come back to the panel. But whilst you're raising your hand, maybe I'll come to Prof lastly before I come to the panel, since he's our contributor from the floor. But are there questions? Okay, I see two Yaga people. I see one CDD Ghana person. Okay, I'm going to be very biased here. Okay, can we pass the mic? Paul? Okay, Paul is from DRC now, so. Turn on the mic.
Thank you so much, Samson. Quick question. I know the rounds of questions were just one. I don't know whether this is intentional, but one thing that out of the discussion is that I didn't hear so much about the operating environment. How was it? And also the attitude of stakeholders, especially around the deployment of technology. I know for me, that was one of the greatest undoing of our elections in Nigeria when INEC started piloting the idea of using beavers. The government in power now was seriously opposed to the deployment of technology, and that's sort of sentiment that was sold to the voters way ahead of even the deployment of the technology. Again, Ma, I know you said so much about the marvel, but what will have been interesting is to also take people through the process. It wasn't for me a seamless process in the sense I know collection was done in one location. Why I mentioned government is so that we don't think everything is just easy with every elections. I know for Zambia, the idea is the Gambia, the idea is to bring everything to one location. Now, even the movement of materials itself, the result itself, if you link that to the question of trust, people also want to ask, to what level what was the trust level like in the Gambia? I also know Liberia has so much of infrastructural challenges. How does that also impact on the deployment of technology in Liberia? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The gentleman in front of, yes. So the operational environment.
All right, thank you very much. I just want to ask if at all you noticed any forms of interference, especially maybe during the transmission of results. Because if we want to use Nigeria as an example, IREV, there are some people that actually uploaded incorrect results into IREV. This was actually confirmed during Ondo State election. Did you actually notice any interference in the process of checking the back end of the result? Thank you.
Sefia, and then Coach Sefia.
Thank you so much, Samson. My question goes straight, and thank you, panelists, straight to Mr. George in Ghana. Very interesting that you had a crowdsourcing platform. I understand that it's time-bound and geolocated. I want to ask, were there multiple uploads from a single location? And if there were there contradicting uploads? And what were, if you had that, how did you handle that challenge? The second is that in your planning state, did you build a scenario where you envisage people uploading, and I'm thinking as a Nigerian, uploading probably fake results? And did you also consider deep fakes? Because you talk about videos, in those scenarios? Because this can happen at the right timestamp and at the right geolocation, depending on how the other side is thinking.
Thank you, Kojo.
Yeah, thank you again to the panel. Also, with the deployment of technology, I think the challenge for observers is, how can you play your role as an observer when it involves technology? We've had issues in Ghana during the voter registration where there's a dispute as to the registration numbers. And as I think was Sayatu was saying that, sometimes the system itself can generate duplicates and so on and so forth. Now, you don't have access to the system. The Electoral Commission rightly is concerned about giving access to third parties and so on. So how do you resolve that issue? In our case, it got to a point that they had to have an IPAC, Inter-Party Advisory Committee meeting, broadcasted live for the IT officer of the Electoral Commission to come and explain how these duplicates happen before people could have a certain trust. So it's sort of going forward, the question and that what role can we envisage for observers in that? Because then you are a trusted sort of arbiter when these things happen. But if you have not observed something or you cannot observe the process, how can you actually help arbitrate, the process?
Okay, so Prof, okay. Prof, you are the senior Prof. So, yeah, we introduce them. So who wants to, it's not in my power to say. Okay, so Professor Junado.
Can you say something about the cost of the deployment of technology? How has it impacted the elections in terms of cost-benefit analysis? Are people worried about the escalating cost of election? And if they are they looking at short-term or long-term in terms of sanitizing the electoral process?
So, Prof. So, Professor Okechukwu Ibiano is a former national commissioner at INEC, but he's a political scientist, and he wears many hats and many suits.
Okay. Thank you, panel. First of all, to start with the point that...
Because of translation.
Yeah. To start with the point that when we say the deployment of technology, we need to unpack technology because, it sounds straightforward. You get a machine, you activate it, it uploads results, you can read it and all that. It's much more than that. So for example, taking George's point, there's the hardware part, but there's also fundamentally the software that runs it. So I think we should do that unpacking. I don't know how much time you want me to speak for because I can tell you about the Nigerian system, okay? But that leads me to the second point regarding what is designed and what is delivered. They are not always the same. Unfortunately, tech people, and I say unfortunately now, what you're seeing is an entire technocracy that has arisen around election technology. But the problem is that while they understand technology, okay, the whole human angle of it, and there's always an assumption that if you write the right algorithm and you have a processor that can run it quickly, you are home and dry. That doesn't happen that way. The third point I would like to make about technology and the election is, look, there is the assumption of technology is that you can achieve two things with it: integrity and efficiency. Let me start with efficiency. Technology, election technology in Africa can never be efficient if you understand efficiency as not just effectiveness, It could make elections more effective, but never efficient because of the cost. And that's where I go back to many African countries, including Nigeria, cannot afford the increasing outlay of money that is required to make technology. So technology can improve processes, but whether it improves it at the right cost for us is also something we need to bear in mind. On integrity, again, the problem is that the technology tribe give the impression that once it runs well, it is okay. It can guarantee integrity. No. And that's where the question of trust comes in. Integrity it's not enough to do the right thing. You require people to believe that the right thing is being done. And that is always a major gap, in the deployment of technology. Let me go back to this point about a technology tribe, a technocracy that is going around Africa. Because I'm listening to this, I'm hearing IREF called something else. I'm hearing biometrics called something else. And it goes on, and you can see it. And I did a short piece 2 years ago or so, where I talked about technology in elections, whether it is democratic or technocratic. And this is really a major issue, that you have in electoral commissions the policy makers who are the ones recognized by law to run elections, who have absolutely no idea how some of these things work. And take Nigeria, for example. I keep saying that the commission in Nigeria could actually be constituted by 12 farmers and one carpenter, for example. And they know absolutely nothing about technology. So you are handing over what should be a democratic process to a technocracy that is not accountable, not really accountable to anybody. What does this mean? What it means on the whole is that we have to be a little bit cautious about how we approach technology. And that is what INEC tried to do over the years. That it has to be, one, it has to be a gradual process. Two, the latest is not necessarily the best. Three, if we don't understand how it works, then it's probably not right. If a farmer cannot understand how it works, then it's probably not the right one for you. And I think we also said that if we cannot tame it, then we don't want it. And that is why, if you look at from 2011, when the second round of biometrics, which is the one that, not the one that SAGEM and the others did, from 2011, the software that that collected the data was written within INEC. The operating system was open source, and also part of what we forget, at the back end, there was this pressure as well to do Oracle. We resisted it, and that's why we did, first of all, SQL and then later MySQL. Now, the implication of all this is that we cannot continue to assume that there is a perfect direct relationship between technology and improvement in elections. In that, there is a transition from the application of technology to improvements in the election. And within that transition, that black box is it's a very, very complex social and human relations that are going on within that. And we should always pay attention to that. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Prof, for that brilliant submission. So let's come back to the panel, beginning with you, Aisha. If there are questions from the floor you want to respond to, but also use that opportunity to make your concluding remarks.
Okay. There was a question, I think, about the attitude of stakeholders and environment. Specifically for Senegal, I think civil society has always been open, especially the COSC led by Prof. Gay, and they've always interacted with the election management bodies because you have the directorate, then you have the Sena, an autonomous council that's also handling the elections, and then you have civil society organizations like ours or the ones specialized on elections. We are specialized on democratic governance, but we do work on elections as well. So the environment, when the members of Sena were changed, you know, I think less than 6 months before the elections, and some of them were part of the then ruling party, there were serious issues actually of trust. One thing, someone mentioned earlier that if the opposition loses, then they will question the system. If Mackey's candidate, the then ruling party's candidate, did win the elections, everyone would have questions. When I say everyone, mostly citizens would have questioned the system because there was no trust per se. And I would like just to emphasize on the fact that, Johnny, just in passing, Senegal announced yesterday its new, what's called New Deal. The current government is in a digitalization process. I haven't seen anything on elections, so hopefully, you know, that's a discussion to happen later. And also, the system is not perfect. There are things to improve, and we don't all agree on what are the things to improve. I just want to talk about the Gambia. Personally, I am in for the mobile system to continue forever because it's a very straightforward process. At one point, Gambia was talking about introducing a single ballot. And what I was saying is, why do you want to change something that's working? We have invalid votes with the marble, and you want to introduce a ballot paper in a country where over 60% is illiterate. So even if we are introducing technology, we have to keep in mind our context. And that's why I would agree. I think someone mentioned, I think it's Prof, the need to, or is it, sir, the need to, you know, for those developing the tools and for those making the decisions, you know, to be not just people sitting in closed spaces. Because if you want to bring in a new tool, my personal belief is you need a sociologist, you need an anthropologist who understands, you know, how this society works. And then you need the developers. And at every steps, and I think maybe that's where we have issues with tech and elections, is that before introducing a process, a tech at 100%, there needs to be, you know, tests, sampling, adjust the system, continuous, and usually the effort it requires to integrate technology within governance in general. I mean, people don't take that, they don't invest the money, they don't invest the resources, so it becomes a huge problem. So I hope that the integrity and transparency we are all looking for within the context of the sub-region and Africa will be able to find results that look like us and results for us, and not just import solutions that come from somewhere else and that are not compatible to our realities. Yes. No, I think there, when it comes to technology, someone who mentioned, I think the first panel about integrity and people's moral, the ones handling, the ones be involved. There are technologies now that can be audited, that are open to everyone without exposing personal data. So if there is, from my standpoint and the little experience I have is there needs to be enough goodwill to make the system work. And it can be transparent and work for everyone.
Isaac?
Thank you. I know my other colleagues will speak, but please allow me to just run over some of the notes I took while the questions were being asked across the room. First, in relation to the environment. Again, the mandate to conduct elections in our countries are given to the election management bodies. The onus is on us to create the right environment. We can determine how both the government and opposition will perceive our attitude towards the electoral process. By that, we can call for stakeholder engagement that does not make political parties or people in opposition feel unwanted in participating in the process. Civil society groups and media groups should be allowed to be at all of these meetings. These are things that we have done at the Electoral Commission in Liberia. It worked for us. I read a research that was done on the tenure of Professor Jega when he headed the EMB here in Nigeria. And one clear note that was written in that research is that everything he wanted to do, he called a stakeholders meeting. So that aspect of engagement and the attitude of stakeholders, you can manage it when they know what you're doing, even if they don't believe you're capable. Because you have told them, they will give you a room to try. And if there are challenges, you should be able to communicate early enough and not to leave them second guessing. What we did for our process in Liberia was we invited the political parties and we said, send a technical expert as a representative to the data center. And every move we made, we informed them. Without the need to call some big flow show, we told them, these are the problems. This is what we intend to do with this one, with X, Y, and Z. And please, we will report back to you in time. If you have any questions, our doors are open. So engagement is very important. Now, to infrastructure challenges in Liberia, yes, we had a lot of challenges, especially with the implementation of the biometric voter registration technology. First, you have a country that's got less than 30% internet coverage just before Starlink could come in December. Now you want to do biometric technology. What did we do? We also went ahead and said we're doing online pre-registration, which is people would enter their own data and then be able to process it at the physical registration center to be issued a card. We knew the limitations were there, so we said, okay, in where there's internet coverage, someone can fill out the form online, generate a QR code, but this QR code should be able to work offline. So that helped us to mitigate the challenge. Now, to the result management, we said, be careful how you put too much technology to the election before you encounter a problem that you may not be able to solve. So yes, sir, to that key point you made, Maka Yard, one of the experts in elections technology, said, it's better to go slow and easy and be very sure where you're going than to run fast and find out that you haven't gotten anywhere. So yes, for us in Liberia, we decided to take it a bit slow. Looking at the challenges that we have, we should not pretend like we can get it all done in one day. That's very key. Now to how we delivered our results. We said anybody can have a copy of the result from the polling place. It is official, it's authentic, it's going to remain the same. We have no intention whatsoever to make any correction to any record in the absence and the parties that are concerned with the electoral process. And when we talk about stakeholders, we talk about both local and international observers. I remember a month before the election or 3 weeks before the election, Yeager came with a team headed by Cynthia, and we told them, go to the polling places, get copies of the result. If you find any issues, my telephone number is here. Call me first. If there's anything out there that you're not comfortable with, let us know. So we were very open. Again, EMBs have to be open. Now let's talk about the cost of technology. Yes, the costs are very high. and for African countries that are struggling with financing even core government facilities and stuff, I think technology in elections for us is high. But again, how can we mitigate these challenges? Like my brother said, most of what we're doing are being done by foreign companies. Do EMBs see the need to train technicians that can be effective over the next 10 to 20 years in their employs, paid properly, better maintained so that they don't get trained and move out and cause a blockade to what could be progress for the EMB? That's a key point that I think election management bodies should take close consideration there too. I am of the view personally that the ballot is still way cheaper than the bullet. And that's where we're having the issue today with the Sahel. We should continue to invest in our elections, reduce the cost, but don't stop investing. What constitutes the deployment of technology, unpacking hardware and software? I would say consistent testing is very important to the process. You want to test and you want to make improvement. What I have observed with elections technology is that when elections are over in West Africa, in some of the countries I've seen, the people tend to forget the technicians. They tend to forget the important notes that came out of the electoral process. And then 6 months to the next election, everybody's like, it has to be better than the last one. That's a difficult thing to deal with. You're going to have to start planning elections technology at least 3 years before the implementation of any kind of technology. I suffered from that with the biometric technology that we used. We should have had this done 2 years prior to the election. We were working on getting it right. 3 months to voter registration. And doing it with delay in funding and all of that, we got our last funding for the election, I think 3 weeks to the election. $6 million, 3 weeks to the election, when almost everything we should have done was already suspended because election is time-bound. The cost is also time-bound. So that's very important for us. The human interaction with technology, again, it has to be integrity-driven. People say you can't find trustworthy people in Africa. I say it's not true. We can find them. We need to train them. We need to build that culture into them. We need to serve a deterrence to people who think that the electoral processes in Africa, in West Africa, can be toyed with. If there's somebody who's caught in the act of manipulating an election, that person should be dealt with in a public manner, and they should serve as an example to others who are coming after them. So using these systems that we have today, trust level is very important. For the public, I'm so sorry. I'm on the last sentence, by the way. Trust is very important. And the way to build trust is not to think that people will trust you because you represent an integrity institution. People will trust you because you have proven yourself as an individual and as an institution to be trustworthy. Thank you.
I'll make a controversial statement. Mindful that may God give us INEC officials that will speak like this. Judge.
Okay, so thank you very much. But just a quick one. When Isaac points to Cynthia and when Yaga came, they said, it introduces something that we've not discussed. The effect of observers, particularly West African observers. And Her Excellency, Dr. Aisha, spoke about your observations in Liberia and other places where there seemed to be trouble coming. But getting close to elections, everything seemed to be. You discounted the impact of your presence on those issues. Because in Ghana, for example, Kojo is here. The moment when everybody opens up is when our brothers and sisters are in and want to see. So election observation is so important that for those of you who are able to do it, it's important that we put it on the plate, that you keep mainstreaming it in your programming. It works. But let me come quickly to a suggestion before I continue. I think, Samson, you need to find a way to bridge the gap between technology expert and governance expert as we grow. I think you are one of the few civil society organizations that actually has a programming line on technology and democracy, on issues like that. I listened to Prof, and again, the excitement I began with, because I've been frustrated for a long time over the challenge of governance experts, lack of appreciation of technology, and the tech people's complete disinterest in governance. And that is what is emerging. My sister, what's your name? Sylvia, you asked me a very specific question, just about how we protect the fidelity of the process. So you asked me, the question that she asked is essentially asking in technology terms, how do you make sure that bad content doesn't enter the system? So picture yourself like this. You have a pipe, okay? And she's asking, you are sure that the water you are putting in is correct? How do you make sure that nobody brings in dirty water either at source or on the way? The only way you can do this is to make sure that the pipe itself has no punctures on the side. You understand? And that at the entrance point, you are the only one who can input material. So that is exactly how the design works. The only content that can get into the system must necessarily come from the app's camera. So it is impossible to import content from outside into the system. And then we can talk a little more about it because you asked very important questions. Let me end by saying, repeating my gratitude to you for this invite and to repeat my request that listening to Prof and our other colleagues, it seems to me the time is ripe to have a full discussion on technology and democracy in Africa and where we are going. I ask this question because for those of you who are following the trend, the techno-fascism that is emerging in the United States of America with Elon Musk versus the digital authoritarianism from China shows that something big is going to happen to Africa by the turn of the decade if we don't address this issue. And it is important that we open discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Finally.
Thank you. I think I need to pay a lot of royalties to Nigerians. Paul was also one that was very helpful in Gambia in our elections. But I shared a photo with the digital team. I'm not sure if they can put it up on the screen to show you how we do our counting process. So this photo is as recent as 3 days ago when we were in Masembe observing the by-elections. So these are the marble stones that we use to cast our votes. And this is a tray which has 200 holes, right? So once the marbles are removed, just to explain the process, right? This is the counting process. I cannot go back all the way to the voting process because of time. So when you are counting, there are 2 trays, and you will also see a sand. We put a sand in the ballot drum. You will see the ballot drum on the far right, right? Half of it is showing. So there is a hole where we put in the marble, and then the sand will protect the ballot drum from making a sound. Because if it is empty, if I put a marble in it, and I will, this candidate doesn't have anything. So we put a sand so that once you put it in, it becomes secret. And then it also rings a bell. Now, once it is done, the IEC officials will empty the ballot, so you will see the person standing there with the red skulls is, I believe, an observer or a party agent. We will remove the marble from the ballot drum, and then we will put the marble and we will actually pour it on that other tray, which has the wires to filter the stones and the marble, and then we'll put it into this tray we call the counting tray. It has 200 holes, right? So these 200 holes, if it fills in, we know it's 200. If it is not, we will know, we will count each. So it is leak-proof. To explain you the process, it's not like that IRF where like the result is pending somewhere else. This is counting on the spot, transparent, the African way, and the results the results will be announced and it will be certified at the polling station. The party agents will sign. So this is the process. So that's why I'm saying it's seamless. We don't want to go towards using voting machines. We're okay with this. we're very much okay with this, and that is marble. Now, the last elections, we only have 2 invalid votes. So it's very difficult. When I was observing the elections in Nigeria and then also in Sierra Leone, when they pull out the ballot paper, someone else put a dot, they will say, oh, it's invalid, right? And other countries will say it's the voter's intent. In our case, it's not the case. You just put it inside and it gets in. So it's very difficult to have invalid votes, right, in this case. And that, look, I'm a tech enthusiast, but also it's important to note that technology contributes to voter apathy. And I'll explain to you why. There is a voter experience spillover effect. Today, in Nigeria here, for those that will be going to the polling station and then queue, and the BVAS is not working, they will call their families. We've been here since 10 o'clock, right? The BVAS is not working. So those that are at home will only be fed up to come out and cast their vote. And if you're already on the queue on a hot sun, the BVAS is not working, most of them will leave because of the impatience. Although I agree with you, Cynthia, that we need to come out and vote, but people are different. People are so impatient. The way we treat elections is different from the way average people treat it. And then we also need to understand that the more their time is being wasted, the more it's going to be difficult to put food on their table, because some of them got to go at work and put food on the table. So technology, if not well managed, can contribute to voter apathy. I'm not going to go further. And lastly, while we are focusing on technology, on voting process, results transmission, we also need to discuss technology on campaign financing. There currently exist 16 digital tools across the world in which political campaign financing are made accessible to the public. Out of those 16, none in Africa. 0. And this was confirmed. This is actually International Ideas report in 2017. None. So how about we start also doing forensics, auditing campaign financing, where our political parties are receiving donations, and then also publishing it. I was reading a report, and I believe in Nigeria, since when INEC was established in 1999, was it the case? The law requires that political parties submit their reports to the INEC, and then INEC takes it to the National Assembly. To date, it has never happened. This is on Transparency International report, right? Maybe we will have to respond back to Transparency International. But then also in Kenya, they do publish their report, but they put it on a PDF file with 1 page summarized financial statements. For those that work on campaign financing and myself, I wouldn't be able to tell whether what the Kenyan law says, this is where you should receive donations or not. I cannot tell that, because you just aggregate all the information and say this is the donation that we have received. So I think we also need to really look forward to expanding technology to campaign financing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Please, let's give them a round of applause. I see Ogalari has, I can give you 30 seconds because we've gone out of time. So if we pass the mic, I need to hold this mic so that when you skip, I can stop you.
Okay, my suggestion, I think, is partly taken care of by his proposal that there should be a conference on technology and elections in West Africa. But really, even when we're looking at that, it also occurred to me that we need to probably also look at the concept of oversight over election technology. I think it has become an important area. How do we have oversight? In Nigeria, we have Nigerian Society of Engineers. We have all kind of private sector and even government institutions. So within this framework, can we begin to look in the direction of election technology oversight? Then secondly and finally, I feel that the technology we need to pay attention to the most is the one at the basic level. In the case of Nigeria, the polling units. And again, that would also lead to the whole question of how do we exercise oversight at that level so that the votes that are counted there and recorded are the ones that are subsequently transmitted and reflect in the results. I thank you very much for the permission, Samson.
No, well, thank you very much, because what you've done is you've put Abu, Vanessa, where's Shamsuddin? Where are the GIZ folks? You are listening. It's put you on notice, and you need to do the needful. Yeah, but I know we're already in conversations, and I'm sure there are lots of things around this this discussion. First, let me thank this esteemed panel for the insightful contributions they've made, but also the questions that you've asked. We started with technology enthusiasm. We went to technology phobia, but somehow we've come back to certain realistic questions that we must answer. Tomorrow morning, we will pivot into discussions around disinformation. And I'm going to put George on the spot, because I know we were in a meeting in Accra last year where George made a brilliant presentation. And I think that for this conference, it will be great to do that presentation again, because he's raised the issue around whether it's digital authoritarianism, but also when you look at the graph and the data and what it tells us about China's penetration and its influence in the information space, I think it will be important to have that presentation tomorrow, in addition to all the conversation, because it's really thought-provoking and it's really revealing. So it helps us understand the complexities of this phenomenon that we're dealing with. So tomorrow we start at 9:30, and we will look at also issues around judiciary. And we have our Leonard Silk over there, and professor of election law, who will be contributing to discussions tomorrow. But we'll have intense discussions around electoral justice. And then we wrap up tomorrow with a discussion about the future. That yes, we've looked at these elections. What do they actually mean for governance? And we hope we can wrap up the day with lunch tomorrow. So I want to implore you to please be early tomorrow so we can start at 9:30 on the dot with all the respective sessions that we've outlined for tomorrow. Before we draw this to a close, let me invite Ibrahim if there are any additional announcements. If not, to say thank you very much for your cooperation, your support for this. And this has not been without your cooperation with us. And whilst he's making the announcement, the panel will take a group photo. But please give them another round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Samson and this our amazing panel to close today. I'm sure we did not feel the heaviness of the lunch that we had with this panel. For don't know, this conference was supposed to hold in December last year, but it was postponed. And I'm sure with good reason, because today marks exactly 2 years since the general election that was held in Nigeria in 2023. The general elections was held on the 25th of February, 2023. Please, before you leave, for those who came via air and for our regional participants, my colleague Anai is at the registration desk. We need your boarding passes for those who came by road. We also need your receipts and to sign for any reimbursements. We look forward to seeing you at 9:30 sharp tomorrow. Enjoy your evening and enjoy the city of Abuja.